Adire, simply, when you break it down to English, is tie and dye. So when you relate that to Yoruba, it is adire ka dinko ka derenko. Ka dinko means to tie, and then ka renko means to soak it. So when it boils down to adire, that's soaking it in dye. So that's just like the plain thing. So tying is like where you would have to decide on the pattern that the tying has to follow. So that the tying is what creates the pattern on the fabric. Then the dyeing is the one that brings out the colors of the pattern that you've tied the fabric into. I chose to do this because in Adire, you can't really have mistakes in Adire. The mistakes tend to turn out as a design. And that's the most interesting thing about Adire, because your mistake can turn to a very crazy ass design. And another funny thing is that you are not going to be able to recreate that design again. That's one thing. It's so mysterious, and that's why I chose to do Adire. And because you can even sell your mistakes at higher price and people wouldn't know. I learned this whole process on my own. That's one very interesting fact. Then second interesting fact is the backdrop for Burna Boy's Grammy award. I designed the fabric. Batik was the process that I used for it. And so many celebrities have been able to wear my pieces, from CK to Ashake down to Kwame and the likes. This sack now is filled of already sewn pieces that we are going to dye. Then we are going to dye the fabric first before sewing it. So she's trying to measure the fabric to cut it to the accurate numbers of yards that we are going to use to sew different pieces. So we're not doing them at stretch because we want to have different designs for each pieces. So she's going to cut them in 2.5 yards. That would be enough to sew what we want to sew. Okay, so this is a polo. So we're going to be putting this inside the water to get it wet first before we do the tying aspect or the process. Putting this in water and then squeezing the excess water out. So we're just going to lay this flat on the table, and we're going to be doing the scrunch technique. We're going to use the rubber bands to hold it together. So this is how it's going to look like. I like to use so much rubber bands so that it holds them together in one place, because I don't always like one part falling during the dyeing process, and so that we can always flip it to the back to apply dye on it. So we are going to dye in the plain fabric. These ones are already sewn, but we are going to dye the plain fabric, the fabric itself, before it is going to be tailored into different pieces. These are measuring cups and measuring spoons. So I use them in dyeing process. So because sometimes we need to mix two colors to get one particular color, so that if I want to repeat that same design, I can be able to get the measurements right. So that's why we have to use this. So gray dye first, because we'll be using gray today. So I'm just going to be using this. This is 15 mil. So I just want the gray to have a shade of blue a bit. On a piece, we're going to have this gray and orange. So most times we need measuring cups for chemicals. The chemicals we use while dyeing is very, 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 very dangerous to the health, especially for women. There's this chemical called hydrosulfate that we use in the dyeing process. That chemical, when you prolong inhalation of this chemical, can lead to permanent loss of sense of smell and taste. So, and then what we do is I use marks every time when I have to do this old dyeing process, and I get to detoxify from time to time. So there are like weeks I can go without having to dye any piece, just that my whole body system can adjust back from, because there's no how, no matter the marks that I use, there's no how, I would always have to inhale just little content of this chemical in. And then there's this other chemical called caustic soda. That one doesn't have any issue with you internally, but it has externally. So when it touches the skin, it kind of like burrow holes on the skin, it eats up the skin. So we always have to be very careful in handling these chemicals that we use in the dyeing process. So this is when we have to put hot water in the mixture of the dye so we can have a dye solution. Right now we don't have a dye solution. This is just dyes mixed with chemicals. So now we need to have a solution. We have to reduce the amount of time we stir. The dyeing process really influences the colors that we are mixing to achieve this kind of pattern. Always influence the pricing also, and then the tailoring also influences how the finishing is being done. Also influences the pricing. This kind of technique, you're not supposed to suffocate the colors. So the white spaces are supposed to allow each of the colors to breathe and spread, because they are going to spread. Yes, they are going to spread. Even during the whole rinsing process and all sorts, they are going to spread. Challenges are so much. Number one is the scarcity of fabrics is one of our major challenges in Nigeria, and not just me alone. It cuts across every other fashion brand that are still small like I am now, because the fabrics that I get to bring for us right now are so limited that and then fabric in Adire plays like a very major role in what we do, because each fabric responds to dye differently. So, and then when you have to do like a collection with a fabric, and then people get to buy that collection, and now other people want to buy that collection again, and the fabric is gone. There's no how you can be able to recreate that. And then the process of having to tell your customers that one fabric is not available, it just kind of like give your business another look, because nobody cares about the in-house production. They just want to see the result. selling points for Ayinke is one, how vibrant my colors are on each piece. It gives other textile or Adire people puzzles in their mind. That how am I able to do this kind of design? And how insane the color splashes are on each pieces are like my major selling point. Hi, I am Ayinke. I am a textile designer and this is my magic.